Rome wasn't built in a day, but the Romans didn't have these tips for getting started in Anno 117. So thank you to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video and my new addiction. And if you want to check it out or help me out, you can find a link in the description, in the comments. You got Steam, Epic, Ubisoft Connect, you know the drill. So the first thing, before we get started, the first thing is liking and subscribing. But the second thing is knowledge. Not a platitude, the literal statistic. Knowledge is one of those basic resources you gather from your citizens. But if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And by the way, most of these tips are in no particular order, just things I noticed in the early game. We're playing on normal difficulty, I know, and endless mode, so they might not apply to the campaign or in specific scenarios. And if you've got better ones, which is not unlikely, then make sure to share them in the comments. But knowledge. If you don't use it, you will lose it. All right? The knowledge that your citizens are generating via existing goes to waste if you're not constantly using it. So there's really no reason not to be queuing up whatever tech you're looking for. And we'll get into what tech is important. But besides the fact that if you're not researching, you're wasting it, the second thing is the chain of tech doesn't necessarily have to be connected. If you've unlocked a keystone, which you do from doing some specific activities, you can hover over each one, then you can actually use that as a connector, which is not super obvious. I just accidentally clicked on one of the things out here, and it said, oh, there you go. Like nautical research, build a shipyard and generate knowledge. All right. So you don't necessarily have to go straight down from the top of the tree, but there are some things that require specific, like, for example, the Roman path in Albion, the second province, for better charcoal and all that. So knowledge, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think before we get into what to use that knowledge on, the layout of your buildings. Now, I know in these sort of games, there's a particular most efficient layout that people are going to come up with. Like, you want the aura of things like your spinners, which weave your beautiful tunics together, and all that. Now, what I'm telling you is that is important. You are right. But I wouldn't worry about it too much until you get paved roads, which is later on like tier 3 citizens. Or, you know, the more advanced ones, however you want to phrase it. Or equites. Let's not worry about the pronunciation here, all right? The details are what matter. So until you get to tier 3 or so, you get concrete. The roads and their efficiency are extended dramatically then. So I wouldn't worry too much about having a particular layout that maximizes things. This is what I came up with after, admittedly, not very much time for maximizing a new island, which we're going to talk about as well, but a new island where I wanted to gather some of the extra resources you don't always get on your main one. So you got things, you got the Grammaticus, which, knowledge in the area. You got the market, giving you +1 to income and population. So that's the amount of workers out there. As well as your basic production facilities. If you hover over each one, you can see the area of effect. A disease has started. Great. Okay, good start. We do it live, with or without the plague. Hopefully they can handle that themselves before society breaks down. But the market, the tavern, and other such things. Now, it's not super obvious. The market and the tavern, yes. But most of your production facilities actually have an area of effect that is not affected by the type of roads, to my understanding, but instead is just a big circle. Unfortunately, most of your buildings are not circles, so you can kind of toy around with whatever's needed there. But this gives you +1 income and +1 knowledge again in the buildings in that area. So maximizing that and kind of getting your overlapping Venn diagram of income, of knowledge, of population, and understanding which buildings do what is very important for maximizing the income and not going broke before you try to do anything. And depending on what difficulty you picked, and the resource consumption and exactly what you're focusing on early, that can make the difference. But I recommend actually reading over each one of these as it comes up and realizing what sort of resources. Like, for example, the fishing hut may give you a bonus, but you don't always want it next to where you're building most of your city. But it can be very helpful on your secondary islands, which I'm realizing now that I didn't read that the first time. That is actually very useful. Yeah, +3 income in the whole area. Okay, so do as I say, not as I do. The fishing hut's a big deal. But just maximizing this, even with your very basic farmers, can make a huge impact on your early game income and efficiency. And speaking of huge impact on early game income and efficiency is production chains. And I think the tutorial does a pretty good job of explaining it. But very simply, since warehouses can magically, through Roman alchemy, teleport resources around the entire map, you do not need to have your production buildings near to your city or your residences or anything like that, even not factoring in boats for trade. But if you click on a resource gathering area, I think sawmills are the most obvious, you can actually see where they're going. Like here, you can see the travel they're taking to the warehouse. But, for example here, the sawmill being right next to the woodcutter means they'll travel to the sawmill, and from the sawmill to the warehouse, and from the warehouse to wherever there's another warehouse to teleport to that you might need it. As for building materials, I'm trying to do a thing, sir. All right, don't disturb the governor. But now, as time went on, I found myself kind of spreading out the sawmills and the woodcutters. And really the biggest expense is on the roads at that point. By default, on normal difficulty, relocating buildings does not have a cost. That might not be true in multiplayer or higher difficulties. But just know, and I'd recommend, playing on normal and being able to relocate and toy around with it. Because, life's about enjoying things. Speaking of happiness. All right, happiness is relatively easy to come by. Bread and circuses. That's what people want. So having things like the theater and the sanctuary, which allows you to pray more efficiently to your god of choice. We're just going to parlay that into God. Plural. So, the most valuable god to start things off, and yes, they do have practical effects, is Ceres, the mother of fields. So, obviously, when you're starting out and most of your islands are agriculturally related, then Ceres is going to be by far the best. And all do I have a god of words? Probably. Not that I could pronounce it. But all residences providing additional population is not just valuable for your workforce, but that's also how you get your income and knowledge again. You've got other options like Neptune, which is more focused on naval production. Mars, with more land-based warriors. You got the gist there. I haven't gotten too far into it either. But picking the correct god, I imagine, early on is a big deal. And just getting some of the checkpoints here for maximizing productivity, for example. And then later on, kind of having varied production of islands. So, knowledge. I think at this point, we've got the basics on production chains, building up early, what things are important to have near your city, what not so much. But the next thing is basic upgrades that are good. All right, and which ones not so much. So I think the most important things early on are warehouse and trading post upgrades. The ability to stuff more stuff in your stuff-keeping areas not only allows you to potentially trade or make more money, but just safekeeping for later. You're going to want to have planks and tiles and all those silly things in order to build up your new islands. So having the ability to store them, and in case production kind of gets, I'm going to use a technical Roman term, janky, when you're retooling or trying to redevelop another production chain, or maybe built a few too many residences and a bunch of freeloading citizens are eating up all your goods, well, then having more buffer and upgrades is important. As well as things like the warehouse upgrade, which you have to manually upgrade on your warehouses. But there will actually be a notification. I don't think I have any here, as I've upgraded pretty well. But you can upgrade those warehouses. You can see how many workers there are on this little tab in the top left. And
Can you cover for me?
unless most of them are being used most of the time, like I imagine this one is quite popular. I imagined incorrectly because the trading post is on its own. I'm quite liberal with the warehouses. I like having a lot of warehouses. Which kind of is a parlays into another tip. Maintenance cost. Now, obviously I've stabilized the income here. Though I'd imagine on higher difficulties and tougher scenarios, the maintenance cost of things starts to add up. If you go to construction, you can look and see the workers and the coin needed, the denarii, and just slapping down warehouses all over the place really isn't that expensive. But it adds up. There's 13 of them on the island, which is draining my income quite significantly. So, another thing, City Watch. Just build it. All right, wells, latrines, all that. Find a way to work it into stuff, because the moment you decide, I don't need that, everything's going to start on fire. All right, that's it. Very simply. Now, ships. All right, possibly the more... not really the most complicated, but definitely a different topic than everything else so far, is controlling the ships and the trade routes, which, I'll be honest, if you got some great tips, make sure to put them in the comments, because I have just the bare bones setup right now for my trade routes. I like to keep it very simple, with a ship just grabbing a single resource and bringing it to wherever it needs to go. Like, for example, I have an island dedicated to resin, so in order to make the pottery. And so the issue with doing a two-way trade route, potentially, which I haven't found a workaround, and I'm looking for it myself, is if there's not enough storage. If they say I put 50 planks in there, if there's not enough storage at that location, they will try to drop it off, and then eventually all the cargo slots will be filled with planks, and they won't actually be able to get the resin. You do have the option, okay, if you would like, to dump it overboard. That is one thing you can do. I'm not a fan of doing that, because I would rather not dump my resources overboard, but if you literally have so many resources that you don't care anymore, you can just... You have less ships, but more resources. You can just dump all the excess overboard. So, if you're into that. Now, I've found even on normal difficulty, the raiders have started to multiply. So, do not skimp. At some point, having multiple ships for escort. I actually haven't gotten to the point of going into combat directly against the raiders or the enemies at the moment. I imagine in multiplayer or higher difficulties, it's much more common. But you will be attacked, and if you don't have basic combat ships, which you can either upgrade with tech, you're going to have a bad time. It might outright cut off your trade routes, and since you require access to other islands, it's not going to be great. So, the summary. There's no summary here. I'm not summarizing that. I just went through like 7 different topics. But, now, not last, and certainly not least, do not buy the big islands first, or they're really not very necessary. Also, second, do not just buy every island that you can at the moment. The cost increases not exponentially, but significantly with 1, how many islands you own, and 2, the size of the island. So, I would recommend an island just like this one for a specific resource to start out. A way to reduce the price is to buddy up to the Emperor. All right? Whichever Emperor you have, over time he'll give you quests or have certain decisions you make And the higher your reputation, the more of a discount he gets. Nepotism at its finest. So, not really nepotism, like just, not important. What is important is you do whatever you can to make the emperor happy, which I believe is the basis of Roman society. So, the more you make him happy, the more he'll make you happy by giving you discounts on land and I assume other things as time goes on, more trading opportunities, all that stuff. But most importantly, your biggest expense is purchasing new islands. And really early on, there's no reason to go for the big ones until you have your basic needs established. In fact, your main island can support a significant amount of population all on its own. It's just you need the basic resources from the other islands in order to do so. I do recommend, though, when you're going for another island, one, let's see if we can demonstrate it. I'm going to move my ship over there, and by the time we get there, we can get back to this tip. It's like, oh, winter. You could have just edited this. This could have been half the time. This is not the kind of game that you play in half the time. Okay? I find it a kind of game that I play for an hour or two, and then I play 12 hours in a day. Sure, it's not healthy, much like my citizens who are currently undergoing a significant plague, which I probably should have built more medical facilities for alongside a whole bunch of the other upgrades, but still. And then, while we're waiting for the flagship, which I have renamed my islands and ships less creative names in order to keep track of them, as I have some difficulty with that sometimes, especially starting out. But the second province, Albion, the beautiful swamps of Albion, which we're not going to talk about now, and get unlocked after you reach your tier 3 citizens, which means you've already established a couple other islands. So, some unique resources in the beautiful, moist wetlands of Albions where they eat eels, and I assume... but one thing that is very important to note about Albion, besides the unique resources, ships that travel there take quite a long time. Like, something like 5 to 10 real-life minutes to go to, let's see, where you can go to this very cool-looking map and see them physically travel from Latium, Rome to Albion. So, in the distant lands off the coast of whatever land this is. Who knows what it could be. But they have tribes and beer. Other important things that the Romans will like. Alright. As our ship made it there, almost. Now this should have been obvious to me. It wasn't, but it should have been. Where you move your ship is where you build your trade post. That first trade post, if you want it somewhere in particular, then you just keep moving your ship. That's it. Alright? You bring those resources with you. You can jam them into the trade post, get a colony started. But 20,000 for this island, which obviously I can afford now, but... So if you want your trade post in a particular spot, like, say, I don't want it over on this side, but I wanted it... Actually, there's no other good landing spot. Not a good example. Or I want it over on this side, which is closer to where I'd be trading most of the time. Well, just make sure you bring your building ship over there. So. What's left? Well, a whole lot, by the way. I would say don't be afraid of maxing out production, especially if you have the income. You can see your production statistics with Control Q is by default, or it's just this button, I believe. If you come up. And very simply, the way to read this, if something's red, you don't have enough. If it's green, you have more than enough. And if the lines are pretty close, you're looking good. But if you expand your population, you might need to shore it up. So it makes it very easy to kind of see what you could be trading, what you need to fulfill the needs, which over time gives you more income, allows you to upgrade your residences, all that fancy stuff. So, let us see. trade routes, diplomacy. Haven't gone too much into it myself, but pretty easy to establish a treaty with most of the other governors in the area. I was trying to come up with the term. But at least on normal difficulty, they're all pretty amenable to early trade, thus maximizing your opportunities. Excuse me? Anyways. Another random tip. One, don't move your trading post randomly, but if you go to the number of all goods, like for example, I've got a stock of 250 here, I just say sell when above 240. The sort of resource you get above 240, so that's some passive income. Whenever a ship comes by from one of those I have a trade treaty with, I get a bit of income from selling off my surplus. Now, you might want to be careful with some particular sorts of goods, but so far, I've found it the easiest method, as well as maintaining a minimum stock of things, so that way you don't accidentally sell or trade away something you might need. Now, the last but not least, besides... Why is there a raider ship? Get away. They do seem to be pretty smart about it. If you have multiple military ships and they only have one raiding ship, they will back off. So, just the existence of having a military. I mean, you can talk softly, but the big stick is the more important part. The copy ability. Now, I would recommend if you get a layout you like, then just take it, copy, paste it. I haven't yet settled on a layout I particularly like, so I don't have a bunch of blueprints or planning mode. But you can use planning mode in order to set up sorts of layouts if you like, and without actually committing to building those things or the resources. And then when you want to actually build it, you can use the upgrade tool with the U key in order to fill it in. Oh, I almost forgot. Okay, I had some things written down. Hotkeys. All right, camera locations. Now, I find camera locations very useful. If you play RTS, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. If not, camera locations, I think by default it's Control F5. You can find it in the options. But they allow you to switch your camera between whatever area you're currently zoomed in on. So I recommend just setting them up on your islands. You can also just use the mini-map or shift between. But I like using the camera locations in order to quickly jump between. And they're specific. A disease started in the swamp. Well, that's not surprising. They are specific to the province, so you can have them in Latium and Albion as well. Specialists. So in your governor's villa, you can have specialists. And you should do whatever you can to maximize these. They are kind of insane. Like, for example, workforce needed in this whole area. Upkeep cost, workforce from residents. Like, these are massive increases. And I can imagine that at a higher level or further on in the game, even more massive. So, specialists are something. And when you get one, it does not automatically add it to your residence. You have to go over here and press the button and put the specialist in. Not super obvious right off the bat. Maybe I'm just illiterate. Both things can be true at once. So, now, that's a lot, all right? And in no particular order. And I hope at least a few parts of it were helpful. These are just a bunch of things looking over that I found to be useful. I know there's a bunch of guides out there that are much more, 1, coherent, 2, easy to listen to, 3, well edited. But I'm much more of a play the game, restart, play the game, restart, play the game. This is totally not my 4th restart out of what I assume is going to be double digits by the end of the weekend. But I like it. The actual review of the game is, it feels good to play. I played a bit of Anno 1800. I didn't play a lot, but it feels very similar, but it looks great. I'm not on maxed out graphic settings, but sometimes I do just like to look. All right, that's not creepy. It's cultured. So, but I'm looking forward to playing some more. And if you got the means of motivation, make sure to check out that link. You made it this far, so make sure to check out the link in the description, in the comments. that'll just send you over to Steam to check it out if you're so inclined. And if you got some friends, well, congratulations. But also, there's a much greater focus on multiplayer, and you can actually play as the same governor, like same civilization. So if you want to either get really intimate or hate your friends by the end, well, you can all share a single setup if you like, instead of just being allied like a team. So, but I don't know much about that. You can check it out, I'm sure, on the page. So, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you'll consider checking out the game. Thank you to Ubisoft for sponsoring this video. And I hope at least some of these tips were useful. And help you get started in building up. And it really clicked for me after a few hours. So, thank you for watching. I hope it made your day a little bit better. Good luck. Have fun. I'll see you next time. Stay chill. Wait, no, we're gonna do a cinematic. Shh. Jimmy, just edit the talking out. I want to do the cinematic pan. Oh, one more thing. The amount of rivers... No, not that, Jimmy. The amount of river and mountain slots is super important. Don't underestimate it. The same island having 3 or 4 river slots, because that's where you make clay. That's where you mill flour. And there's concrete and limestone later on for the mountain slots. And I'm sure there's more later on in the tech tree. So make sure to keep that in mind. Thank you. Okay, just cut.